There we go. So there it is, the Hope Diamond. Out of its setting, the diamond was found in India in the middle 1600s. It was sold by a gem merchant named Tavernier.
Through the centuries of human history, there have been some pretty crazy paranormal events that have taken place. Those paranormal events were actually something that we covered on this channel recently. But what about things? What about objects? What about stuff whose connection to death is far too strong to ignore? What is good, my friends? I'm your host, Nicholas Playlog, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at the top 5 haunted items from ancient history that will curse you. Let's get into it. Number 5 on this list is the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is one of the most famous jewels in the history of the world. Its exceptional size and beauty are practically unparalleled. It is 45.52 carats and gives off a beautiful blue hue when it is hit by the light, truly a marvel from the world. This diamond is said to be worth anywhere from 200 to 350 million American dollars. To put that in perspective, if you had this diamond, you could buy your own Hawaiian private island in exchange for it. The earliest records of the diamond go all the way back to 1666 when a French gem merchant purchased it. Since then, it has changed hands many times, ending up in the hands of some royalty and eventually making its way to the National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., where it resides today. This diamond may be the most beautiful stone on the entire planet, but one should be careful with it because it's said to hold a curse. Over the years that this diamond has been in circulation, many tragedies have befallen the owners of this stone. An article written by Christy Puchko writes, "Some believe it is cursed, with a whole mythology claiming that great misfortune and misery will befall any who dares to wear the 45.52 carat diamond. Rumored victims of the diamond have suffered disgrace, divorce, suicide, imprisonment, torture, financial ruin, lynching, or decapitation. One was even said to have been ripped apart by dogs and another by a French mob. If these stories are true, then it's no wonder why the legend of a curse has circulated around this diamond. So with all that being said, I want to ask you guys, if somebody offered you this diamond, do you take the risk? On one hand, you could be the owner and the bearer of potentially the most sought after rock on the planet, but on the other hand, you might just be a very expensive dog treat. Let me know what you got down below, diamond or no diamond. Number 4 on this list is Tut's tomb. Now this tomb is the most famous, however this entry could be generalized to any tomb of a pharaoh that is disturbed. If a pharaoh's tomb is disturbed, then you will have activated the pharaoh's curse, and this will befall anyone who enters and disturbs the sleep of these mummified Egyptian royalty. For a long time, hieroglyphs couldn't be deciphered, but in the early 19th century this changed and we were able to read them. On the pyramids of Giza, there is a very specific curse written on the entrance. It reads, "All people who enter this tomb who will make evil against this tomb and destroy it, may the crocodile be against them in the water and the snakes against them on land. May the hippopotamus be against them in the water and the scorpion on land." This acts as a pretty clear-cut warning to stay away and not disturb anyone that's inside. I should also note that this rule applies to anyone. We're talking archaeologists, thieves, literally anyone who enters. Your motives for entering don't matter, it's only that you are there. Over the years, this curse has reared its ugly head time and time again. When they first opened the tomb of King Tut, there is a famous story of how Howard Carter, the leader of the team operating the excavation, had a canary, and when it entered the tomb, died at the hands of a cobra. 2 weeks later, the person who financed the whole operation, Lord Carnarvon, was bit by a mosquito and died due to a horrible infection. These are two of the most famous examples, but for centuries, bad luck, sudden illness, and death have been tied to these ancient tombs. Another one of the pharaoh's tombs warns, "They that shall break the seal of this tomb shall meet death by a disease that no doctor can diagnose." I'd say that that's just about as clear-cut as curses come these days. Number 3 on this list is James Dean's Little Bastard. Now I'm certainly stretching the definition of ancient history on this one because this story actually takes place in the 50s, but with the amount of lore that surrounds it, I wanted to include it in this video. James Dean was an extremely successful male actor in the 50s and was one of the biggest heartthrobs of the generation. He's critically acclaimed and is potentially one of the best actors to ever play the cool, bad boy roles. Sadly, he was taken far too soon and died in a car accident at the age of 24. The car accident took place in a rural town in California. The The accident was a head-on collision that he had in his sports car. This sports car was a silver Porsche 550 Spider, and James Dean affectionately referred to it as his little bastard. This car, although a super cool vehicle, is completely cursed. After Dean died, George Barris, a hot rod designer, purchased what was left of the car with the intention to sell it for parts. When this car was being worked on, it fell and completely crushed the leg of one of the mechanics who was working on it. This is when the potential of a curse started to materialize, but it would grow into so much more. The parts started to get sold and people started to notice a very horrible connection. Anyone who bought parts of this car started to die. The buyer of the engine of the little bastard died shortly after in a fatal car crash. Somebody who bought the tires got in a horrible accident when those same tires just blew out whilst they were on the road. The person who bought the transmission was sent to hospital with critical injuries after getting in a car crash. The truck driver who was moving the car's frame, he got in a horrible accident and he was killed. The amount of death and tragedy that ensued from this car is truly uncanny. The frame of the car that the truck driver was transporting was eventually stolen, and to this day, we don't know where it is. I hope whoever stole it though at least had the foresight not to ever drive with it, because the consequences could be dire. Number 2 on this list is the Basano Vase. The Basano Vase is a pretty vase that was made all the way back in the 1500s in Napoli, Italy. The vase isn't ornate in nature, it has a very simplistic silver design. It was initially intended as a wedding present, however, it may just have been the worst wedding present that anyone has ever gifted. That's because this vase is a vase of death. Now I know that sounds dramatic, but it truly brings death to whomsoever comes in contact with it. Its initial run-in with death is when it was given as a wedding gift, and that same night as it was gifted, the bride was murdered in her home while she was holding that vase. Some people believe that her spirit haunts this vase now, or that a spirit of death has always had its clutches on this vase. Either way, it didn't stop with just the bride. At the time, the family didn't realize that the vase had anything to do with the misfortune that had befallen the bride, and they continued to pass the vase down generation to generation. However, it seemed that whomsoever was in possession of this vase would meet an untimely death soon after receiving it. After the family realized what was going on, they boxed the vase up and put a note in it that read, "Beware, this vase brings death." The vase was auctioned off in 1998 though, and the note wasn't included. It sold for $2,250, and it was the worst purchase the buyer ever made. 3 months after buying it, they died. Then 3 more deaths of the following owners were linked to this vase, until finally the original family who auctioned it off in the first place demanded that the police take it away. Since then, no one has heard anything from it, which is probably the best thing for everyone. Number 1 on this list is the Crying Boy painting. Once again, stretching the term ancient here a little bit, but it ties into World War II, so I feel like it should be counted. Giovanni Bragolini was a Spanish artist who was famously credited with making a series of paintings of crying children. He made these in the early 1950s, and they were meant to symbolize all of the poor children who became orphans due to the brutal fighting in World War II. His initial market was tourists. However, these paintings, they started to really take off in Europe, and a lot of British families grew fond of them. For years, they were nothing more than just a painting, until in 1985, when the curse of the crying boy hit the mainstream. Ron and Mary lost their home from a kitchen fire. Even though their entire livelihood burned to the ground, the painting of the crying boy that they had, it lived on. It was the one item to survive from the fire. Ron's brother Peter was a fireman, and he said that this wasn't the first time that he saw this. In fact, he believed that he had witnessed the same phenomenon 50 times before. It was then believed that not only were these paintings immune to fire, but the owning of them would inevitably cause a fire in the first place. Mass hysteria ensued, and legends started to come out of everywhere in regards to these paintings. People claimed that it caused their family members to die, or that it was cursed with the soul of the children it depicted. Either way, this reached unparalleled levels, and finally a newspaper, The Sun, said that if people were to ship them their copies of these paintings, they would dispose of them. Over 2,500 copies were sent to this newspaper, and they burned all of them in a massive fire. I don't know if it really was the paintings causing these fires, or if they were cursed, but chalking it up to a coincidence seems a little bit too good to be true to me. Well, there you have it, guys. That is our list of the top 5 haunted items from ancient history that will curse you. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.